Hi, it's Sandy Wyllie. Welcome to my mental health channel, Inside My Holes, where I wipe away the stigma of mental illness by talking about my own personal struggles, having borderline personality disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety and severe panic anxiety attacks, depression. I talk about my narcissistic mother who used to beat me up and shame me and abuse me, my schizophrenic father who was in and out of mental hospitals and who abandoned me as a child, my traumatic brain injured son who was an invalid from contracting meningitis at age 4, the psychologist who raped me and physically abused me, and a plethora of other mental health related topics. But I only come on as a former patient of almost 20 years. I am not a licensed therapist. I do not hold a degree in psychology, and I cannot diagnose you or give you a professional opinion. All I ask in turn of you is please be kind and respectful in the comments. Be kind to me and respectful. Be kind to others. We don't have to agree on everything, but we do need to agree on being kind and respectful. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Please hit that square box in the lower right hand corner that says subscribe. That way there you'll be notified whenever a new video comes out. It's 100% free, and if you like what you see, give it a thumbs up. Now today's video is about my unhealthy attachments with therapists. As I told you in the beginning of all these videos, I've been in therapy. I used to be in therapy for almost 20 years. I have not been in therapy for the last 3. I started going to therapy when I was 38 years old. I lost both my parents back to back within 3 months. I'm an only child. I had a cousin who was like a brother, but he came in and he stole my inheritance. And right when my father and mother passed away, I had to get a lawyer and deal with a lawsuit against him, at the same time burying both my parents back to back within 3 months and not having any siblings or anyone else. It was a mess, and a very sick invalid son on top of it. I always looked up to and was attracted to older men. I never was attracted to boys my own age, ever. Even as a 10-year-old, I would look up to older men. Connie the painter, he was in his 50s. When I was 14, I was attracted to, and I wrote and called and almost dated a 48-year-old man who was married with little children. That's what happens when you do videos outside in the city. You gotta just go along with the flow. And then in high school, I went to an all-girl Catholic high school overrun by nuns. I used to have a crush on the much older male teachers. There were only a few of them, anyway. So when I started seeing Dr. Richard Geist, he was 22 years older than me. Okay, so he was like 61 at the time I was seeing him, and I was in my late 30s. And I was love at first sight, what can I tell you? When I was a child, like I was saying, I was abandoned by my father. My father had severe paranoid schizophrenia. He was delusional. He heard voices. He was psychotic. He was out of touch with reality. He was in and out of mental hospitals, McLean's Mental Hospital. He was a compulsive gambler. He had drinking problems. He was a chain smoker. And he also left me as a little girl when I was like 2 years old. He left me for several years with my narcissistic mother, who left me with babysitters while she dated some famous politician. And so I really felt neglected and abandoned. And that's how I got borderline personality disorder from my traumatic upbringing. But because of my father's abandonment when I was a little girl, him leaving me alone with the Wicked Witch of the West, or the East. I lived on the East Coast. I became, enamored with older men, and this psychologist, Dr. Richard Geist, was 22 years older, and I started forming a very fast, I fell in love with him. Love at first sight, attraction to him, because he was unethical. I went to him, he told me that he wanted to see me all the time. Over 5 hours a week. I could call him morning, noon, and night. He invited me on his vacation to Maine. I could sit in his lap. So he fostered an unethical relationship, and I had an unhealthy attachment. It was a codependency, which is always unhealthy, and always, it's really detrimental to the patient, because what therapy is supposed to be is you go to a therapist to work on your problems, okay, for a period of time until you feel good enough about yourself and that you've, dealt with whatever brought you to therapy. It could be anything. It could be as simple as you lost your job and you're not sure what vocational path you want to go to, or it could be as complex as me having borderline personality disorder or bipolar, where you really need some serious help. But wherever, you're supposed to, whatever you come into therapy for, you're supposed to work on those issues and get better and then leave. And the therapist is supposed to, help you to help yourself. That's what it's like. They're supposed to help you to help yourself. And when they set up a codependent relationship, then I formed an unhealthy attachment to my psychologist. I felt like I couldn't live without him. This is how unhealthy it was. I'd get up in the morning, I'd exercise, and then I'd look through my whole wardrobe to pick out the perfect, the best, the most low-cut, the best looking blouse and skirt and shoes. And then after I go through all that, I iron them so they'd be perfect, And then I'd primp myself up. I'd spend hours bathing, making sure my makeup was impeccable, making sure my nails were impeccable, my hair was impeccable. I'd write him emails every morning telling him how much I love him, how excited I was to see him. And then I would just sit there and daydream about him until the time the appointment arrived. What kind of life is that? I didn't work. I had no job. I sat alone in the house primping myself for my psychologist. All right? I wasn't a writer then, back in 2005. I didn't write. I didn't do videos. My son was in the hospital. No, he was he was out of the hospital. He was in an institute that was far away. We used to see him at night, like 3 times a week. My husband was at work. My other child, Austin, was at school. So all I did was daydream and primp myself up for my therapy. And write my psychologist emails, call my psychologist in between sessions. And this was very unhealthy. Thought about my psychologist 24/7, 24 hours a day. Couldn't live without him, couldn't function without him. He set this up, and he regressed me down to a child that literally completely depends on their parent. How did he regress me down? Laying on the floor with him letting me touch him all over his body, like a young child would do, um, like a little baby wouldn't know if they grab their mama's boob or pull their mommy's hair. They're just a little baby. You know how they like to touch, put things in their mouth and everything like that? That's how he regressed me. He'd read to me children's stories. He had a play area with dolls and puppets that in blocks, and I would go and play with the toys like a little baby. I could not function without him, and it was a very, very unhealthy attachment. It traumatized me as bad as my daddy traumatized me with his schizophrenia in and out of mental institutes, which is not his fault. It's a severe mental illness, severe schizophrenia. And leaving me with my narcissistic mother, and my psychologist left me too. After he babied me and regressed me, he grew tired of me and left me just like my daddy left me when I was a little girl. He just grew tired of it, I guess. But then I was abandoned all over again. And so I went to another psychologist, Dr. James Barbaria, who was over 11 years older than me. And he took advantage of me too by having sex with me. It didn't start out that way, of course. First it starts out by him holding me and rocking me like a baby in his arms. Now he would hold me close, really tight to his body, and caress my back up and down, and rock me like this, just like a little baby, or like romantic lovers. It depends on whatever way you look at it. It could be like rocking a little baby like this, or like lovers slow dancing, swaying to the music. And then we'd start kissing. Then he'd have me sitting in his lap, same as Dr. Richard Geist. And then he would start French kissing me in the sessions and talking about all his problems. I'm paying him, and I'm talking about all my, and then I'm paying him, and he's talking about all his problems with me. I stopped talking about my problems, and he started talking about his, and I didn't think this was healthy. I threatened to quit the therapy, and he started crying and clutching his heart, and he said he couldn't live without me. He'd rather cut off his right arm. I'm not kidding you. Those are his exact words. He started crying. He was clutching his heart, and he said, I can't live without you. I'd rather cut off my right arm. And then, we started having sex, giving him blowjobs, taking me to bars and turning me into an alcoholic. Dr. James Barbaria turned me into an alcoholic. I never touched vodka, okay? After sex, he would bring me to the bars. Why would he bring me to the bars? I don't know. Some guys like to smoke after sex. He likes to drink after sex. What can I say? He didn't smoke. I didn't smoke. But as soon as we had sex, it would be like, we're going for dirty martinis. We get dirty, and like, and that's what got me hooked on vodka. And then there was Dr. Jeffrey Fortgang. Jeffrey Fortgang, again, who's like, oh God, probably 20 years older than me. I started seeing him and had an unhealthy attachment to him. He was in a music band, and he wrote the famous song, Some Guys Have All the Luck, that Rod Stewart sings. He wrote that song. Google it and you'll see Jeffrey Fortgang. He went to Hollywood parties. He was introduced to Burt Bacharach and a lot of other famous Hollywood players, whatever, people at the time. And he talked all about his personal life with me. Then he brought me into his house and started, playing piano and singing Sinatra, all the Sinatra songs. He started holding me really tight. We almost kissed once. And it just became another unhealthy attachment. And he dumped me too. So see, they all abandoned me. They all dumped me. After they had their little fling with me, or after they had their little whatever time with me, they all dumped me. And I suffered the consequences after each and every one. The weird thing about this is, Dr. James Barberia, the one I had 2-year sexual affair with, he saw both Dr. Richard Geist and Dr. Jeffrey Forking. He saw both my other psychologists. I introduced him to the other two, and we used to go together as a couple. I mean, the links to my books are below. But what I'm trying to show you here or explain here is about how these unhealthy attachments hurt. And it's not just in therapy, but you're very vulnerable when you go to therapy. I was in a very, very low spot in my life, with losing both my parents back to back and my brain-damaged son being an invalid in an institution, and my cousin stealing my inheritance. My cousin had access to the bank accounts because my father was dying of cancer, and he trusted Stephen, my cousin, like his own son. He said that. He's like my own son, and he trusted him, and Stephen came and stole all the money. I got it back, but I had to fight in the court system and get a lawyer at the time when I shouldn't have been doing that, because I was burying both of my parents. So I never learned healthy attachments. The only healthy attachment I have is my husband. That's the only healthy attachment I have in my life. He's the one and the only one. But just beware if you go to therapy, or if you're in therapy, having feelings for your therapist. That's a red flag, okay? Because this all started with having feelings, and it might seem innocent in the beginning, but it isn't innocent. Like, we only hug. Hugging may seem innocent, but let me tell you this. Most sexual abuse starts off with an innocent hug. And it started off in all these cases with me with an innocent hug and extra attention. Extra attention, and innocent touching. Just hugging. You think, hugging? There's nothing sexual with hugging. That's how it starts with hugging. It starts off innocent, okay? It starts off with extra attention, extra praise from the therapist. Touching, innocent touching, okay? It's innocent at first. Then it starts with grabbing their penis, like I did with Dick, massaging him all over, feeling his chest up, knowing he has a mole this is where he has a mole, right here, under his breastbone, above his belly button. He has a big mole. How do I know that? So it's just unhealthy. It's very, very unhealthy, and it's gonna, it just re-traumatized me, and I'm still not over it. I still drink heavy. I still have insomnia. I still have gut problems. I still have panic attacks. I'm not over the trauma, okay? So the best thing to do, the best advice for me to give to you is don't get into something that you can't get out of, all right? Even though I'm away from it, I'm out of those therapies, I'm still, its impact on me is still present, okay? So don't start, that's what I'm saying. Don't start. If you start having feelings for your therapist, romantic feelings, get out. Just leave the therapy. Please, please, just leave. Look what happened to me. It's unhealthy. If you think your therapist is acting too friendly, overly friendly, or you're noticing he's spending extra time, any kind of feelings, if you feel any kind of feelings other than just genuine liking the person, if you're starting to feel romantic feelings, please leave. Please leave. Don't go don't put yourself through what I went through, an unhealthy attachment, because I'm not over it. It's ruined my life. It's ruined my family's life. That's all I can say.